Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Sasha Kelchik-Korn. I am Executive Director here at Realm of Caring Foundation. And I'm joined once again by Dr. Swathi, who, if you missed it, she joined us back in November, where we discussed the 5 things your patients need to know about cannabis. And so we had that great conversation. It's available in your healthcare practitioner portal or your client portal on our website if you want to go back and watch it. But we are so excited to have her here again to discuss the potential benefits of CBG. You speak so greatly about CBG. You say it better than everybody, and I'm going to not say it for you because I know you're going to say it better on later on how it can help. But Dr. Swathi is the co-founder of Element Apothec and Chief Scientific Officer, as well as an integrative health pharmacist. So thank you so much for joining us again.
Yes, absolutely. And you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So let me share my screen, put together some slides for the presentation. So let me make it a little bit bigger and then put a slideshow.
And we do have that Q&A box as well. I just want to let everybody know that if you have any questions, you can put them in here, but I do have some other questions saved up for people who wrote in that we'll get to at the end.
Okay, perfect. So can you see my screen?
Yep, looks great.
Full screen? Okay, awesome. Alrighty, so let's get started. So thank you to everyone who joined today. I may or may not have mentioned before, but I love talking about cannabinoids, and in particular, a lot of these minor cannabinoids are really fascinating, and there's so much ongoing research about how we can integrate them into our daily life, whether it's integrating them for ourselves, for our patients, for our loved ones. And so specifically today, we're going to focus on one cannabinoid in particular that is called cannabigerol. And I call it the cannabinoid for gut and glow. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. All right. So first and foremost, even before we delve into what is CBG, I just want to, for those people who might not be, as aware of the endocannabinoid system and cannabis, I wanted to give a little background and provide a framework before we jump right into CBG. So on the right hand of the screen, you can see what's called the endocannabinoid system. And sorry about that. I really like this particular diagram because I think it does a really good job of demonstrating all the particular organ systems that are involved. And I actually think there could be even more organ systems than just these. But in parentheses, you can see these letters that say CB1 or CB2. And so these can mean, wait 1 second. I'm going to mute myself. It's been just one of those days of really back to back. So I apologize. It's very dry out here today.
Take as much water as you need. We're proponents of health over here.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So yes, as I mentioned, so you can see in parentheses are CB1 and CB2. And so these are cannabinoids found in the endocannabinoid system. And these are actually the cannabinoids we know the most about. The CB1 receptor most commonly associated with the central nervous system, and the CB2 receptor most commonly associated with the immune function, are really optimizing the immune function and optimizing the inflammatory response. And so here you can see that the CB1 and CB2 receptor are really widespread through a lot of different organ systems. And this is important because, not only is the endocannabinoid system, its overall goal, I should say rather, is to promote this idea of balance or homeostasis in the body. And so if we're thinking about homeostasis, that doesn't just correspond to one particular organ or one particular neurotransmitter. It really is about this interplay and conversation between all these different systems, neurotransmitters, and overall physiological processes in the body. And so I really like this image. It's really basic and visual, and I love the way that it breaks it down. So it gives you a good idea of why the endocannabinoid system is so important for our overall health and wellness, and really how it does speak to the direct and indirect relationship that it has to a lot of different organs and neurotransmitters, and why all of these systems really need to work in synergy and not against one another. So I'm going to start there, with the endocannabinoid system. Then on the left side, on the top of your screen, you'll see a bunch of these chemical structures. And so I really wanted to demonstrate through this image, or I guess group of images, that there are about 200 cannabinoids we know about thus far. There could be more. There likely are, but at least for now, that's what we know about. And I have CBG in the middle here. So CBG is one of the many cannabinoids in the cannabis plant that's found naturally occurring. I always talk about, and I really like to refer to cannabinoids as kind of siblings in the cannabis plant. So all of them are related, but they're not quite the same. They all have their particular function and, really have specific functionality and reasons why they work in the body, and might have different receptors that they correspond with, whether it's CB1 receptors, CB2 receptors, or what are also called non-cannabinoid receptors that I'll talk a little bit about in the next slide. And so, yes, as you can see here, we have CBG in the middle. It's kind of thought of as the mother or father or parent figure of all the cannabinoids, because really when you think of the biochemical structure and the way that CBG is then broken down or metabolized into different, whether it's metabolites or active ingredients, active components, you do see that CBG is kind of the precursor, is really the fancy word for a lot of other cannabinoids to come. So CBG is really important and is becoming more and more interest to the scientific community in terms of the possible potential benefits for it. And like, as someone who is a healthcare professional who's talked about cannabinoids and CBD and CBG and CBN and everything for so many years, like, this is something that's really exciting to me to now finally see all this new research coming out and see how we could integrate cannabinoids like these for a lot of different reasons. Okay, another thing I wanted to mention, just to paint the picture of not even cannabinoids, actually even beyond that, to paint the picture of what's found in the cannabis plant naturally occurring. As I mentioned, there are 200 or so cannabinoids, and in each different strain and everything, there are different ratios and proportions of these different cannabinoids. And these different ratios denote, what type of benefit or reason that a patient would choose them. But beyond cannabinoids, there's also other active components that I have, listed in these shapes at the bottom, these little hexagons. And so these are some examples of what are called terpenes. And so terpenes are kind of referred to as the essential oils in the cannabis plant. I think that reference is a little, not misleading, but a little limiting as to their therapeutic potential. So a lot of the time when you smell different cannabis strains, they'll have particular scents. And, maybe one smells a little more like pine, one smells a little more like citrus. And a lot of this is because of the terpenes found in the plant. But that being said, a lot of these terpenes as well have been researched for different therapeutic, options, different reasons why you would consider them as well. So when you're looking at, one strain versus another, when you're looking at different active ingredients, when you're thinking about how can I put together the best combination for this particular patient and this particular reason, then it really is important to look at cannabinoids, but also what terpenes are present. And the other thing I love to talk about with terpenes is that not only are terpenes found in the cannabis plant, they're also found in a lot of other, foods and spices and, vegetables and fruits and so many different things. And here we have some examples, like pinene is found in high amounts in the pine tree. And then also we have things like myrcene that's found at high concentrations in mango. So a lot of these things not only are found in cannabis, they're also found in other things. And I found that, especially when opening up the conversation the first time around, maybe second time around, with a healthcare professional who's interested in cannabis or maybe isn't interested in cannabis, but where you're trying to figure out, what would resonate with them and what they would understand, to draw these connections has been really helpful. That, this is not just cannabis related, that these components can be found in a lot of different things as well as cannabis. And therefore, that really adds to the story of why cannabis can help so many people. beautiful. And then I also have on the bottom left-hand corner, I have this really beautiful rainbow, and that's to remind myself to talk about that in the cannabis plant, not only do we have cannabinoids, we also have terpenes, and we also have other active components called bioflavonoids or flavonoids, bioactives. There's a lot of different words that can describe them, but they're really like exactly as they're named. They are compounds that are really helpful in a lot of different therapeutic areas, and they're found in a lot of different, naturally occurring fruits and vegetables and foods and spices, and you can see some of them on the screen here. Okay, so that's a little bit of a background on cannabis, the endocannabinoid system. And so now we can talk a little bit more specifically about CBG. And so, as I mentioned, cannabigerol really is part of that initial process in how, from a biochemical standpoint, we go from CBG or CBGA, then it's decarboxylated, which is a fancy word for heat is applied to it. So that could be done like manually in a lab to go from CBGA to CBG. Or it could actually be something that if you just leave your, whether it's your, cannabis flower or another product, if you leave it out to heat or if you leave it in direct sun, then the chance of it turning into CBG from CBGA is higher. And of course, this is like over time. It's not instantaneous unless you're doing it in a lab at a certain temperature. But it is something to keep in mind when it comes to storing your cannabis effectively. And so, and ensuring that you're getting the exact effect that you're looking for. So yes, we have CBGA that when decarboxylated or heat is added, then it becomes CBG. Or CBG, if you add an enzyme called CBDA synthase, that enzyme turns it into CBDA, which is then, if that's decarboxylated, then becomes CBD. So you can see that CBG and CBGA in particular and CBD are very much related. And as I mentioned before, yes, I think of cannabinoids very much as siblings, and they are related. And so many of them, by one or two biochemical processes, can be turned from one into the other. And so that is something that I think is important because, not only CBG is not like living on its own somewhere within the cannabis plant, like it really can correspond with a lot of other cannabinoids like CBD. It can correspond with a lot of other cannabinoids as well, but I just wanted to demonstrate CBD. And that's mainly because CBD is just so commonly discussed these days that I thought that that would be a good relationship to show. And then I also wanted to talk about the entourage effect, or it's also referred to these days as well as the ensemble effect. I love both terms. Everyone has their preference. And so what I really like about the entourage effect, and what paints also a really beautiful photo of, or a beautiful, image or painting of everything going on in the cannabis plant is this net that you can see that all of the cannabinoids and flavonoids and terpenes and all of these things are really interwoven. And the entourage effect says that when all of these active components are present at the same time, they really can synergize with one another, which really means that they can optimize the way that they work in the body. And then that could mean, that maybe you're giving your patient, if you have a lot of these components present, maybe you're able to give your patient a little less of one active ingredient because it can synergize with other ones. And so I find that really exciting. And I think that's also why, for example, a lot of products that are isolate products, when compared with broad spectrum or full spectrum, they don't necessarily have the same, bang for the buck or the same impact. And a lot of that is because of this effect from the entourage or the ensemble. And as you can see in this web that we have here, CBG is featured because CBG is a minor cannabinoid. And that's something I actually didn't say the distinction before. So CBG is considered a minor cannabinoid. And what's considered a major cannabinoid is CBD and THC, of course, also present in this entourage effect web. But the main reason why they're considered major and minor, I always want to clarify, is not because like one is more important than the other or anything. That terminology is because of the, amount of concentration found in a lot of like cannabis plants. There tend to be higher percentages of CBD and THC versus CBG or CBN or THCA, CBC, other minor cannabinoids on the screen. So that's why it's called minor. All right. And then the other thing I wanted to mention that I hinted at the previous slide is, yes, there are the receptors that I mentioned here on the right side of the screen that are CB1 and CB2. So cannabinoid type receptor 1 and cannabinoid type receptor 2. So beyond that, though, what I think is sometimes missed in conversation with receptors in the endocannabinoid system is there actually are what are called non-cannabinoid receptors. And this means that there are other receptors that work directly or indirectly with the endocannabinoid system, and therefore have some sort of impact on the functionality of it. And so this means that if we're incorporating, let's say, CBG or CBD in particular, and THC to an extent as well, they work with a lot of receptors that are not just CB1 and CB2. I mean, if we use CBD as an example, most of the research points to it having a very low affinity, or in other words, it doesn't like to bind to CB1 and CB2. Instead, it does overall modulate the endocannabinoid system. So a big question in the scientific community was like, well, how on earth does it do that if it's not binding to these two receptors? And the idea is that it actually binds to and has a higher affinity for some of these non-cannabinoid receptors. And so I have an example of a non-cannabinoid receptor on the screen on the bottom right-hand corner that says TRPV1. And this is actually one of the reasons why CBD and CBG as well work so well in the skin, because there's such a dense concentration of TRPV1 receptors in the skin. And so CBD is able to bind to that receptor as well as CBG. And so CBG has been shown to have some sort of moderate affinity to CB1 and CB2. I see a lot of varying information in terms of studies when it comes to those two, but I have found very promising studies linking CBG and TRPV1, as well as other non-cannabinoid receptors that then influence and therefore modulate the endocannabinoid system. And so I think that this is really important when thinking about, why we would use CBG, why we would use CBD for a lot of different reasons. And, as I mentioned, the overarching goal of the endocannabinoid system is to promote this idea of balance or homeostasis. And so, whether it's through the incorporation of any of these cannabinoids or, other potential things we do throughout our daily life, or, stressors that we're going through, it's really important to think that there's so many aspects and reasons why our endocannabinoid system works really well. And sometimes, there are different things and strategies we can implement in our life to enhance the functionality of it. So anyways, now moving on to CBG. So more specifically, what I think of with CBG is gut and glow. That's like the quick and fun way, I suppose, of saying that. But for gut health, what I mean by gut and glow is CBG has been researched to be really incredible for the gut lining, and in particular, how it has to play a role, or how it does rather play a role in inflammation. And what you may or may not know is a lot of our immune system and a lot of the functionality of it has to do with our overall gut health. And so you might see a lot of, trending articles that are talking about gut health and immunity. And, all those are, they're not a fad. They actually are founded in science. So it's really important. And that's why, what you eat and your nutrition and all of that, and eating a diverse group of foods and everything is so important for your gut health, but also for your immunity. So, and that's something that, is becoming more and more a part of common discussion, which I absolutely love to see, because it's something that I've been talking about for a long time. But gut health and immunity, and therefore the influence of inflammation is really important. And then again, going back to the idea of the endocannabinoid system, the incorporation of these cannabinoids really help maintain this balance. So this balance oftentimes is to combat a lot of inflammation in the body. And, I do want to say something about inflammation that I think is really important. So inflammation is not always bad. And so I see a lot of, companies and brands and things like that saying words like anti-inflammatory. And I think for a long time, that was a very normal way of referring to, awesome antioxidant compounds and things. And, CBD and CBG have a lot of those properties. However, I think we need to change the narrative a little bit around what it means to be anti-inflammatory versus promoting a healthy inflammatory response. Because if we're in an environment, for example, and there's like it's flu season, that's a great example. So if there's flu season, we do want to have a certain inflammatory response if our body does encounter the flu, because we want to be able to fight it off and have that healthy response. So what that is it's acute inflammation. So it's inflammation that happens, immediately at that instance for that particular reason. And then we're able to fight it off and it doesn't become this chronic issue. And so what a lot of new research is saying that I just find fascinating is that a lot of these disease states that we never considered having an inflammatory component are now being linked to having an inflammatory, like having either inflammatory markers involved or even having a root of chronic inflammation. So things like, whether it is gut health related and IBS or Crohn's, or we're talking about, chronic disease states like diabetes. There's a lot of discussion now about, how diabetes really does have this relationship with inflammation and how we can combat that. The other, kind of category of diseases as well are mood disorders like anxiety and depression, and how those also have a root in this idea of over-inflammation, of excess inflammation, and therefore this inflammation that's chronic. So I say chronic as in, chronic is the opposite of acute, is kind of the scientific way of looking at it, but it's really this like long-standing inflammation that's therefore wreaking havoc on a lot of different systems. And so having, this unwanted inflammation can really be detrimental to a lot of different processes. And so in this particular context, we are talking about gut health and how CBG can really play a role in that. And, the healthier your gut is, then generally that corresponds with a healthier immunity. And then the other thing, and how kind of gut health and glowing skin kind of go hand in hand is a lot of dermatologists say that, if your skin is breaking out, if things are going on, then that's a reflection of, your gut health, as well as, how your, internal processes are going, what your inflammatory state is and everything, and how skin is such a telltale sign about what's going on under the surface. So again, I put inflammation as the number one thing because so much, and I think also the reason why that cannabis or cannabinoids in general can really have such an incredible role in a lot of different disease states comes back to this idea of balance and decreasing the amount of unwanted or chronic inflammation. And so glowing skin in particular, I love to see the research that's coming out, but from a lot of different groups about what CBG has in terms of its capability in promoting healthy skin. And so, healthy skin, whether it's, the big term now is like anti-aging. I like to say aging beautifully, but ways that we can promote aging beautifully. And so for some people, that's the decreased appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. And one of the big things with CBG is this idea of collagen production. So it helps promote collagen production. So it's not, like A equals B, like you take CBG, you get more collagen, but it's involved in the biochemical process. And that's really important because a lot of these issues that have to, quote unquote, do with anti-aging have to do with the lack of collagen, or rather the loss of collagen as we age. And so that's really important. CBG has also been studied for its use in hydration and like retaining moisture in tissues. And so this can also be applied to glowing skin, or, how to keep your skin nice and hydrated, especially this time of year. The other thing too is skin texture and breakout. So as I mentioned, this idea of decreasing the state of chronic inflammation and improving the texture, and also decreasing, really what it does is it evens out the skin tone. So it decreases the hyperpigmentation and decreases the amount of redness in the skin. And, these are a lot of preliminary studies, but the studies are very promising. And one of the things that I'm really interested in, as Sasha mention, I am the Chief Scientific Officer of Element Apothec. And one of the things that we're rolling out this year that I'm really proud of is continuing this discussion of how CBD and CBG can be used in gut health and glowing skin, because there is really so much more to learn about it. And these preliminary studies provide so much great insight. But, my next question as a clinical researcher or, someone who's, has scientific expertise is, what else can we learn? And how can we replicate some of these studies? And so that's kind of, what's to come on our end. All right. And then I also wanted to mention that CBG has been mentioned in a lot of different other studies, in particular to do with glaucoma. I know that Dr. Bonnie Goldstein talks often about how she uses CBG as well as CBD and other cannabinoids as well, but really focuses so much of her work on CBG because it's incredible for the work that she's done in the pediatric population, and particularly the pediatric population that has autism. So that's also something incredible. And then the other thing too that makes a lot of sense to me from like a medical standpoint is CBG for the use of anxiety, because CBG can be really great for calming the overall nervous system. And so if you're calming the nervous system, you're getting involved in the fight and flight response, which is really important. It helps to balance mood and therefore also could benefit anyone who's feeling, anxiety or a bit more above baseline anxiousness. All right. Okay. So CBG dosing. Okay. So this is always a big conversation about dosing and what this means per patient. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, cannabis dosing will always be really complicated. At least, maybe it won't always be, but at least for now, in the way that we view cannabinoids and the way that we dose them, it's just, there is no one size fits all. And it's always about, at least to me, I hear a lot of people saying, start low, go slow. I 100% agree. But the thing that I add next to that is stay low, because there's this idea, if we, project what a lot of modern medicine says is that the higher the dose, the better the outcome for the patient, or, the more we increase the dose, the more benefit there is, kind of a thing, which, as we know with cannabinoids, is not the case. There is that biphasic reaction or the biphasic processing of cannabinoids. So that means that, there's, at a certain point, there's a great little balance of how much works for each person, but there also is a point where it becomes too much. And so we want to ensure that it is the right amount per person. And so I always say, if you're going with an under the tongue tincture, the best way to go is like a quarter of the dropper. Hopefully your tincture has graduated lines, so you're able to see how many mils you're taking. And so I really like that, just so a patient can get acclimated. The other big thing too with dosing is evaluating from a healthcare professional standpoint, how much CBG or any other cannabinoid, honestly, how much of the cannabinoids are people consuming daily already? Because that gives you a good idea of like, if they're already taking, 300 a day, do we really want to be adding more? Maybe we just optimize their current dose. Because oftentimes I find, at least in my practice and when I've worked with patients one-on-one, that again, people think that more is better. And so they sometimes are taking too much, which was surprising to me. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. And then with dosing too, evaluating not only how much are they taking every single day already, there also are a lot of patients that are coming to cannabinoids now that have never tried a cannabis product in their life. They've never tried CBD, CBG, anything. And so with them in particular, it's really important to be there as a guide and do that education that, we're going to start low. We're going to do this for a few days. We're going to reevaluate. I always say with dosing or trying a new product to have like a journal or something where you can take notes as you go as a patient. And then the patient has that notebook ready to go for when they see you as a healthcare professional visit, whether it's telemedicine or in person, so that you can evaluate how everything is going for them. And, maybe sometimes they don't even fully understand when they say like, oh, I'm taking this amount, it makes me feel this way. It could actually be a potential side effect, which we'll talk about on the next slide. And then I did want to mention with dosing, you may be aware of this already, but I do think it's important to note, and I did already use this terminology, so I apologize for not reviewing it until now, but there are different types of products with CBD. So there's isolate products, there's broad spectrum products, and full spectrum. Isolate is exactly that. It's just isolated CBD. The one, you might be aware that there is an FDA approved product that is plant derived that is CBD, so CBD isolate. And it was FDA approved in 2018, I believe, for rare pediatric seizures. And so that one is on the market. So that's, a version of an isolate. But there also are tons of isolate products kind of in the wellness sphere, things that you'll find at a dispensary as well. Okay, then there's broad spectrum. So the main difference between broad spectrum and full spectrum at the end of the day is whether or not it has THC. And that's why I really like this diagram, because I feel like it denotes very, very easily from a visual standpoint that, oh, okay, full spectrum has THC and broad spectrum does not. And mind you that these particular definitions, I'm talking about, what was stated by the Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill was enacted in 2018, and that was, or it's also known as the Agricultural Improvement Act. And so that talked about that, we have the maximum possibility of having 0.3% THC in any products that are sold, at a pharmacy, or unfortunately at a gas station, or at, a lot of other really easy to access places. And if you want to make a product or sell a product rather that has higher than 0.3% THC, then that would mean that that's something that could only be found at a dispensary. And so even when you see isolate, broad spectrum, and full spectrum, if you're not in a dispensary, that means that maximum, even though full spectrum means it has THC, it means that it only has a maximum of 0.3%. Alrighty, so next we are moving on to side effects. So this is important because, that's one of the highest, questions that I get asked, I would say, is, what could I use this for? And then what type of side effects could I experience? And then dosing is probably the other one after that. So in terms of side effects, I call it the 4Ds, for CBG, for any cannabinoids, not THC, but for any other, cannabinoid that we have in our Element Apothec products. And so the 4Ds, I say, are dry mouth, dizziness, drowsiness, and drug interactions. The first three, pretty self-explanatory, but drug interactions requires a little more discussion. And so when looking into the metabolism, so metabolism is just a fancy word for breakdown. So when looking at how CBG is broken down in the body and how it's there, how it's, after it's metabolized, so broken down, then after how it's excreted in the body is also important too. That's where we get into a lot of the discussion about drug interactions. And actually two or three of the enzymes that really play a big role in it actually play a really big role in the vast majority of drugs that are currently on the market. And so this means that there could be a possibility of drug interactions with a lot of potential medications. And these drug interactions, I just gave a talk about drug interactions recently and was thinking about, there's so many potential interactions, and there are the kind of interactions where I call, CBG could be a prey or a predator is kind of the way I look at it. So CBG could either be the predator, meaning that it's going after other medications, and it means that CBG works just fine, but CBG is impacting the drug concentration of other medications, which, becomes a really big problem if someone's taking like a statin or something for their blood cholesterol, or they're taking like a blood thinner or something that they really need to function. Then, we really need to evaluate if CBG is the right choice, or CBD for that matter, or any cannabinoid. And then there's the other side where CBG, I would say, is like a prey. So that means when it's administered with another medication, that the drug therefore impacts the amount of CBG if it's, a prey, it's being acted upon by a predator. So let me know if you need any more distinction and clarification on that. It's just something that I came up with a few months ago. And I think it's a really easy way to understand it. And, with drug interactions, it's really important to think about, is CBG the predator or the prey? When I administer CBG with another medication, is this going to get in the way of the actual, way that another medication functions that, a patient might really need? And so again, it's very patient specific, very dependent. Also, there's an element of pharmacogenomics, which is really interesting because a lot of these enzymes that are found in the CYP450 enzyme system, they really have a lot of genomic components to them. And so what that means is that, if you have, one or two gene variants or alleles that really speak to one of the enzymes not functioning properly, that could also influence what a drug interaction could mean for the person. So again, this is a lot of nitty-gritty detail, but the most important things is to keep in mind the top three, and that drug interactions could play a role. And if we'd like to delve into that more, I'm happy to. I'm not sure there'll be enough time this time, but definitely in another chat, we can delve more into what that means. Okay, and then the other thing that I think is really important, this is an infographic I made a few years ago, and I've been updating it ever since. But as an integrative health pharmacist, as Sasha mentioned, not only am I a co-founder of Element Apothec, but I also at heart really am an integrative health pharmacist. And to me, that means the intersection and, discussion of all these different healing and health modalities that are on this spectrum, this colorful wheel. And so as you can see, medical cannabis is listed, but also so are things like nutrition and mindful attention and genomics and herbs and movement and rest and community and homeopathy and drug interactions. And I guess I listed almost all of them around the circle, but I mean, there are so many different aspects of health and wellness. And at the end of the day, it's patient-centered shared decision-making. So it's talking about all these potential options for a patient and figuring out which is the right decision for them. And, being that guide as a healthcare professional. So this is how I view, overall wellness and the idea of treating disease. So, I just think it's really important too that CBG is incredible, but it might not be incredible for everyone. And so we just need to evaluate on a case by case basis what is going to suit someone's lifestyle the best. And I think that's everything. Alrighty. Yes.
Awesome. Well, you're already getting compliments on your great graphics in the Q&A chat. So they are wonderful. Yeah, we had you answered so many things so beautifully, and you already are ahead of some of the questions that had come in. But I want to go back on a couple, and thank you for just like those detailed explanations. I know we even have some of our care team listening in saying like, this is great. So thank you so much. But I would love to ask, one of the questions that came in early on was, I am currently happy with my CBD regimen. Could CBG be something I can supplement my regimen with without changing what I am currently taking or my current dose?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just depends on what you're looking for from CBG. Are you looking for a specific reason? Are you looking more for, optimizing health and wellness? So I think it depends on the person. And so I would say overall, my answer would be yes, but it kind of just depends on what you want.
Of course. Yes. And then going off of that, one of the questions that came in while we were talking is there a dosing range for CBG? Like if an ideal starting point potentially, what's your advice on that?
I would stick to the same thing that I said in the presentation of like start low, go slow, and stay low, because at the end of the day, I mean, I know people, like if we use CBD as an example, I know that like some starting ranges people say, 15, 20, 25 kind of a thing. But I know some people who take 5 milligrams of CBD and it's just enough for them. I also know people, and I've worked with patients who are like 75 does nothing for me. And so it's really, and I think that's one of the things too with dosing and everything. It comes down to, or rather, it doesn't come down to, you know, gender, you know, adiposity or like fat mass. It doesn't come down to, you know, height or weight or really anything that we can dose a lot of other medications on. At least that's what we know so far, is that there isn't really any set, you know, ranges. Generally the way that it works though with any cannabinoid is that the lower amount that you take, then that could be more for health and wellness versus like if you're trying to treat a specific condition. But I will say though, when comparing, you know, CBD and CBG, I do think you need less CBG to have a benefit. So sometimes that's, you know, a 5-to-1 ratio of CBD to CBG. Sometimes it's even less. So it depends, but I would say that, you know, the minor cannabinoids are more potent than they let on. So you don't need as much as you think you do.
Great answer. Yes. No rule book, case by case.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I like that. So one of these questions that came in, if you want to use CBG topically, is it safe for daily use? So for this individual specifically, if I use it on my face, should I use it every other day? So clearly we're used to that skincare routine, right? Of for some products, they might be very potent. So use it every other day. And I'm sure it also depends on the formulation, right? Like a tincture versus a cream or something. But yeah, so is it safe for daily use on the skin?
Yes, I would say it is safe for daily use. Again, you don't want to be taking too much, but generally in formulations, like in a skin, like in a serum, for example, or in a topical formulation, what I see mostly on the market and the way that we've decided to do it at Element Apothec is really that ratio of having more CBD to these minor cannabinoids, and ensuring that, you know, whatever product or company that you're buying from is based in science, so that you shouldn't be worried buying a product that has CBG, because they, you know, it should be overall great for, you know, skin and radiance, and then also moisture.
Yeah. And you touched on a really great point, and that's going back to trusting the product company, just to knowing how the cannabinoids are sourced and the COAs, if they're available. And so just understanding the quality of the product, a very important point. And I know we're getting close to the hour, so I don't want to take too much of your time, but there's just a couple other good ones. And
sure,
if anyone else watching has a question to pop in the Q&A, please feel free. So this individual said, I suffer with IBS symptoms, gas, cramping, etc., that can be brought on without warning. Is there any research to suggest taking CBG at the onset of symptoms, or should I be using daily as a preventative?
So currently the research doesn't really speak to like breakthrough symptoms, I think is what you're referring to, when it comes on suddenly. So I would recommend taking it on a regular basis. And again, like with this idea of the entourage effect, not taking CBG on its own, I would say to take CBG and CBD together from a preventative standpoint.
That's, yes, great. Great advice. And then, so for skin benefits, is CBG best ingested or used topically?
Oh, I love this question. Okay, so this is a great point, that, you know, like the idea of like beauty from the inside and out, the idea of like skincare from the inside and out. I think that's kind of trendy right now, but that's something that I've been talking about for a long time. That, I mean, it's like, especially when we're talking about, you know, even if we're not talking about like skincare from like a, you know, beauty or like therapeutic way, you know, if you're putting like, let's say for like arthritis pain, like so much of that has to do with inflammation, and inflammation is internal. And so, you know, if you're going to use like, for example, like what I think would be really great for arthritis would be like a patch that is put locally on the specific area, but then also taking CBD internally and using them together as like a perfect match would be my suggestion. So if you're looking for like the most like potent effect of CBG, I think the best way of getting it is to put it topically, whether it's on your skin, or rather whether it's on your face or the rest of your, you know, body for skin, and topical use, and like supplementing that, so to speak, with something that's ingestible too. So it's kind of that multi-prong approach.
Awesome. Yeah. Hit it from as many angles as possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wonderful. Well, it looks like that's it for our questions that have come in, but I do encourage individuals, we will have this uploaded in your portal on our website. We'll also send it out in our newsletter so you can watch back. If you do have questions, please write in, because we would, of course, love to have Dr. Swathi visit us again, and we can always use those questions for next time, and just build them up for our next presentation for you all. And I want to thank you so much for joining us again and sharing your wealth of knowledge with our community. I know they appreciate it, as do I.
Yeah, absolutely. I love coming back and interacting with the Realm of Caring community. So if there's any other questions that you do have, please let Sasha know. She can follow them up with me, and then we can take the conversation from there. And also the questions really help too, as we figure out, like if we're, if and when we'll do webinars again together, like what else people are interested in learning about. Because I mean, I'm so pleasantly surprised to see how many people are here and wanting to learn about it and having such great questions just back to back. So, I mean, if there's anything else that you all really want to know about, please relay the message to Sasha and hopefully we can help.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because as I like to say too, our consumers and our clients drive our content. So
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Well, thank you so much. Hope you have a great evening, and we'll chat again soon.
Sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye.